The Zor Empire had conquered countless worlds, laying waste to civilizations, enslaving planets, and claiming dominance over every corner of the galaxy. Their strategy was simple: eliminate resistance and bend everything to their will. But in their quest for power, they had come across an ancient and foreboding warning: never wake Earth's warriors, a rule echoed across dead civilizations, a rule every species feared. When Commander Zarak of the Zor stumbled upon the forgotten remnants of Earth, a dying planet long lost to time, he was intrigued. The remnants were veiled in mystery, hidden beneath layers of cosmic dust, and they seemed to offer a key to unparalleled strength. The Zor's relentless search for Earth had led them here, to the last unclaimed mystery of the galaxy. The promise of an ultimate weapon, a weapon thought to be the last defense of Earth, was too tempting to resist. The warning of previous civilizations rang in their ears, but Zarak and his elite forces were confident they could harness the power of Earth's warriors, the legendary protectors of the planet. As Zarak stood in the remains of Earth's once thriving capital, now buried beneath crumbled ruins, he couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had overlooked this lost planet for eons, dismissing it as a graveyard, yet here he was, at the threshold of something incredible. The last of Earth's vaults lay before him, its secrets locked away for millennia, waiting for someone bold enough to unlock them. "Are we sure this is wise, Commander?" a voice interrupted Zarak's thoughts. It was General Vex, his loyal but cautious second-in-command. Zarak turned, his cold gaze piercing through the darkened air. "The Zor do not fear threats, Vex. We dominate them. And this is no different. Earth's warriors will bow to our will, just as every other civilization has." The rest of the Zor soldiers stood by, their weapons drawn, awaiting their command. The vault before them hummed with an ancient energy. With a final, commanding gesture, Zarak activated the device. The massive doors groaned open, revealing a vast chamber, deep beneath the surface of the Earth's former heart. The air was thick with the smell of decay, but Zarak's excitement only grew. Inside the chamber, the warriors stood dormant, massive figures encased in crystal-like structures, their forms indistinguishable from the warriors described in the ancient texts. They were the Earth's last line of defense, engineered for war, each one a titan of unimaginable strength. As the chamber doors opened fully, an eerie silence settled over the vault. "We are the masters of this now," Zarak said under his breath, his fingers hovering over the control panel that would awaken them. "Awaken them, and the galaxy will bow to the Zor." But as his hand made contact with the panel, the room seemed to tremble, and the silence shattered with a deafening roar. A jolt of energy surged through the air, and Zarak's confident expression faltered as he felt the presence of something ancient. Something far beyond his comprehension. The warriors stirred, their massive forms slowly coming to life. The first warrior to awaken was enormous, towering above the Zor like a god. His eyes were empty, but his movements were deliberate, powerful. He scanned the room, his gaze eventually landing on Zarak. The Zor leader's heart skipped a beat. "You dare to awaken us," the warrior's voice boomed, its tone as cold and deep as the void. "You do not command us, alien." Zarak's hand tightened around his weapon. "I am your master now. You will obey the Zor." The warrior's lips curled into a grin, one that was as terrifying as it was mocking. "We were not made to serve. We were made to protect Earth. You will regret waking us." The chamber trembled again, the walls beginning to crack as the remaining warriors slowly awoke, one by one. They were all the same, massive, powerful, and unmistakably human in their essence. But there was something different about them. Their eyes glowed with an ancient knowledge, and their movements were fluid, not bound by the mechanical limitations of the machines Zarak had expected. "Get them under control," Zarak shouted, panic creeping into his voice. He had not anticipated this level of resistance. His soldiers moved forward, but the warriors reacted in a blur of motion. A colossal fist collided with a Zor soldier, sending him flying across the room with a sickening crack. The rest of the Zor soldiers opened fire, but their weapons did little more than spark harmlessly off the warriors' reinforced armor. The warriors did not flinch, they moved as one, each one a force of nature. one of the warriors stepped forward, effortlessly dispatching another group of Zor soldiers. His voice rang out again, carrying the weight of centuries of power. "You think you can control us? You will never control Earth's warriors. We were not designed for you." Zorak felt a cold chill race down his spine as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. These were no mere machines. They were something more, something far beyond anything the Zor could ever hope to subdue. They were sentinels, guardians of a planet long forgotten. And now, they were awake, angry, and out of their cage. The leader of the warriors advanced toward Zorak, his face unreadable, but the fury in his eyes spoke volumes. "You should have listened to the warning." With a swift motion, the warrior's hand shot forward, knocking Zorak to the ground with terrifying ease. The Zor leader struggled to rise, his face contorted in pain and fear. "You cannot do this," he spat, his voice hoarse. "The Zor Empire will crush you." The warrior paused, his expression changing from one of anger to something more contemplative. He leaned down, bringing his face closer to Zorak's. "The Zor Empire does not matter here. Earth matters. And we will protect it at all costs." Before Zorak could respond, the warrior raised his hand, a silent command. His fellow warriors, all towering giants, moved forward. The Zor soldiers, realizing they were outmatched, began to retreat, but it was too late. The warriors were too fast, too powerful. Zorak scrambled to his feet, desperately trying to rally his forces. "Fall back! Fall back!" But his orders were drowned out by the deafening roars of the warriors, now fully awakened and enraged. The chamber was filled with the sound of battle as the Zor forces scrambled to escape, their once unshakable confidence shattered in an instant. Zorak, now cornered, realized that he had underestimated Earth's warriors, and in doing so, had sealed the fate of his empire. The last thing Zorak saw before the world went black was the warrior's final words, "We are Earth's wrath. And no one will ever again dare to wake us." As the chamber fell silent, the warriors stood victorious, their mission complete. They had fulfilled their duty to Earth, protecting it from the threat of the Zor. But as their gazes swept over the ruin they had created, they knew the war was far from over. There would be others, other empires and other civilizations who would attempt to awaken them. And every time that happened, Earth's warriors would rise again. Because they were not just Earth's defenders, they were its reckoning. The galaxy had been warned. Jared Callahan stood at the edge of the desolate moon base, staring out at the endless void of space. The sky was a deep, empty black, devoid of stars, as if the universe had turned its back on Earth and its last remnants. He had always felt like an outsider, disconnected from the world that had long since crumbled beneath his ancestors' mistakes. Raised in isolation on this forgotten moon, Jared had never known Earth as it once was, beautiful, full of life, and brimming with untapped potential. Instead, all he had known were the stories, whispers of a past so distant it felt like a myth. The stories of Earth's warriors, the last line of defense designed to protect the planet, were buried deep in the remnants of history. But those stories were about to collide with reality. Jared had always believed the warriors were nothing more than legends, whispered warnings from ancient civilizations that had long since perished. He had never believed he would be the one to awaken them. And yet, here he was. His bloodline, cursed by betrayal and abandoned by Earth itself, was the last link to those ancient warriors. The descendants of the people who had once created them now lived in fear, isolated from the galaxy, haunted by the knowledge that they might have betrayed the very planet they were meant to protect. It was the discovery of a long-forgotten transmission from Earth's final days that had brought Jared to this moment. The message, recorded by a group of scientists who had been working on the Warrior Project, had remained hidden for centuries. It had reached his ears through a strange stroke of fate, an encrypted message, as if the universe itself had decided it was time for the truth to come out. The message had been clear: do not wake the warriors. Jared had tried to ignore it, to turn away from the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. But he couldn't. The warriors were meant to defend Earth, and Earth was long gone. If the warriors still existed, what threat could possibly justify waking them? The transmission had also spoken of a final safeguard, an emergency protocol activated if ever the warriors were called back to action. And now, it seemed that someone had already begun the process of awakening them. The Zor, the ruthless alien empire, had found Earth's hidden vaults. They had stumbled upon the very thing humanity had feared for centuries, the warriors, buried beneath the surface, ready to rise again. As the Zor activated the ancient system, Jared had no choice but to confront the consequences of their actions. He didn't want to be part of this war, but the universe had made it clear that he was involved now. The warriors had been stirred, and Earth's last line of defense had been unleashed. The first warrior had appeared like a ghost from the past. His eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, fixed on Jared, as if recognizing him immediately. The warrior stepped forward, his massive frame dwarfing Jared, and spoke in a deep, resonant voice. "Human. You are the descendant of those who betrayed us. But you still have the blood of Earth in your veins." Jared's heart raced as he tried to steady himself, not entirely sure how to respond. The warrior's words struck deep, like an accusation and a revelation all at once. He had always been told that his ancestors had played a role in selling Earth's secrets to alien factions in exchange for power. It was a legacy that Jared had never been able to escape, and now it was staring him in the face. "I never asked for this," Jared said, his voice tense. "I didn't wake you. But I'm not going to let you destroy everything." The warrior studied him, his eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing Jared's words. "You don't understand, human. You are not in control here. We were not created to serve. We were created to protect." Jared swallowed, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. The warriors were not machines. They were living beings, their loyalty to Earth ingrained in their very essence. The power they wielded was beyond anything he could comprehend. The idea that these warriors could be controlled was absurd. The Zor were fools if they thought they could bend them to their will. "Then what do you want?" Jared asked, his voice more firm now, even as a sense of urgency gnawed at him. "What are you going to do?" The warrior's gaze shifted toward the distant horizon, where a storm of energy was building in the distance. The Zor had arrived in full force, and their attack was imminent. "We will defend Earth," the warrior declared. "No matter the cost." Jared knew the warriors wouldn't stop. Earth had been their home, their purpose. But Earth was gone, reduced to a barren wasteland. What good was their protection now? What could they possibly defend? But as he looked into the warrior's eyes, something stirred within him. The warriors were not simply defending a planet. They were defending a legacy, a piece of humanity that had been lost to time. And Jared was the last link to that legacy. He couldn't stand by while the Zor tried to destroy everything. But he also couldn't control the warriors. They were too powerful, too untamed. Their power was their own, and Jared was not sure he could control them. He had no choice. He had to try. "We need to stop the Zor," Jared said, determination setting in. "I don't care what it takes. But we can't let them get Earth's secrets." The warrior nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then you must stand with us, human," the warrior replied. "You are our kin, for better or worse. And now, you must prove yourself worthy." Jared didn't hesitate. He had no idea what he was about to face, but he knew one thing: he would fight, not just for Earth, but for the humanity that had been forgotten. The warriors had a purpose, and now Jared would have to figure out how to use them without unleashing destruction upon everything. The battle between the warriors and the Zor would be fierce, but Jared had something the Zor didn't understand: he had the will to fight, and he had the warriors' respect. It would take everything in him to stop them from causing more chaos than they already had, but he couldn't afford to fail. As the first shots from the Zor's ships rained down, Jared looked up, ready to face what was to come. The warriors would stand by him, but only if he could prove himself. Only if he could earn their trust. And that was just the beginning. Jared's heart hammered in his chest as the warriors assembled in front of him. The Zor were coming, their massive fleet already descending upon Earth's shattered remains. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, each warrior looking to him for guidance, even if they didn't trust him. The last of humanity, raised in isolation, now stood as Earth's final hope, surrounded by ancient sentinels whose allegiance was uncertain. Could he control them? Or would they tear everything apart? "You know what must be done," one of the warriors spoke, his voice calm yet commanding. His massive form loomed above Jared, a living embodiment of the destruction the warriors were capable of. "The Zor will try to bend us to their will. They have no idea what they are dealing with." "I don't have all the answers," Jared admitted, taking a deep breath, "but if we don't stop them now, they'll destroy whatever's left of Earth. We need to act fast, or this entire galaxy will fall." The warrior narrowed his eyes. "Then we shall not hesitate." Jared turned toward the horizon, where the enemy fleet was visible, descending like a storm. A fleet of hundreds of Zor ships, each one capable of obliterating a planet, was closing in. They thought they could control the warriors, and that was their first mistake. The warriors were not mere machines. They were protectors of Earth, designed for a purpose far beyond that of mere soldiers. He knew the warriors could not be swayed from their path. They had one goal: protect Earth at all costs. But the Zor had crossed a line, and now Jared had to figure out how to channel the warriors' power without unleashing a cataclysm. There had to be a way to use their might without destroying everything in their path. "Gather the warriors," Jared said, his voice growing steadier with every word. "We'll strike before they land." The warriors began to move in unison, their massive forms stepping forward with a purpose that sent a chill through Jared's spine. These were not soldiers. They were gods of war, born from Earth's darkest designs. They could bring the galaxy to its knees in seconds, and Jared couldn't help but wonder if that was the price of awakening them. The Zor wouldn't expect this. They would think they could overpower the warriors, use them as tools for their own conquest. But Jared wasn't going to let that happen. He would find a way to control the destruction. He would find a way to protect humanity's future. The first Zor ships hit the atmosphere, their descent marked by flames and explosions. Jared felt the ground tremble as they touched down, their landing forces already preparing to assault Earth's surface. But the warriors were faster. They didn't wait for the Zor to settle in, they were already on the move, their massive feet pounding the earth, shaking the very ground beneath Jared's feet. The warriors didn't need a plan. They didn't need instructions. They knew their purpose, and that was all that mattered. As they reached the Zor lines, they tore through the enemy ranks like a hurricane. The Zor soldiers opened fire, but their weapons were useless. The warriors were unstoppable, their bodies like iron, their strength like that of titans. With each strike, Zor soldiers were thrown aside, crushed underfoot, or sent flying through the air with nothing but a flicker of resistance. The Zor were no match for them. Jared stood at the rear, watching the chaos unfold before him. He had to be careful. He couldn't allow this to escalate into a full-scale massacre. The warriors were far too powerful, and once they started, they wouldn't stop. He needed to control the tide of battle, direct the warriors' fury, but how? "Hold," Jared commanded, his voice cutting through the battlefield. "Hold your positions." The warriors hesitated for only a moment, pausing in the middle of their rampage, giving Jared the brief opening he needed. The Zor were still regrouping, trying to mount a counterattack. This was his chance. He sprinted toward the nearest warrior, his breath ragged. "Listen to me," Jared shouted, his voice desperate but determined. "You were made to protect. But this isn't protection. If we destroy everything, there will be nothing left. I won't let you make the same mistake humanity did." The warrior looked down at him, his glowing eyes piercing. "Human, you dare speak of restraint?" the warrior growled. "We were created to protect, and protection means annihilation for those who seek to destroy." Jared felt his stomach twist. The weight of those words, "protection means annihilation," struck him like a punch to the gut. The warriors were not simply soldiers. They were the final answer, the last word in Earth's defense. And now that they were awake, they were treating the Zor like an infestation, something to be purged. "You're right," Jared said, his voice shaking with the effort to be heard over the chaos. But Earth isn't the same anymore. There's nothing left to protect if we burn everything to the ground. You can't keep killing without reason. You must listen. The Zor will retreat. They don't have the will to fight us to the last. The warrior remained silent for a moment, as if weighing Jared's words. His eyes flickered, the ancient knowledge within them shifting. For a moment, Jared thought he might have broken through, that the warrior might listen, but then the silence was shattered. "We are Earth's warriors," the warrior said coldly, his voice like a thunderclap. "And no one dares to challenge Earth." With a terrifying roar, the warriors surged forward again, and this time, they were not holding back. The Zor, who had been preparing for a counteroffensive, were overwhelmed. Jared's worst fears were realized as the warriors tore through their ranks, their rage unchecked, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. There was no reasoning with them once they were set loose. Jared felt his heart sink. He had failed. The warriors weren't listening to him. They were fulfilling their mission, and in doing so, they were destroying everything they were meant to protect. The battle raged on for what felt like hours. The Zor tried to regroup, but their forces were decimated. The warriors showed no mercy, cutting through their ships, crushing their weapons, and overwhelming their soldiers. Jared knew the Zor would retreat soon, but it wouldn't be soon enough. The planet was being torn apart by the sheer force of the warriors' wrath. The consequences of waking them were becoming clearer by the second. And yet, there was nothing Jared could do to stop it. As the final Zor ships retreated, their surviving soldiers fleeing into space, Jared stood in the ruins of the battlefield. The warriors were still there, their fury slowly subsiding as the last remnants of the Zor forces disappeared into the void. Jared's mind was racing. The Zor had been defeated, but at what cost? Earth had been spared, for now, but the warriors had done what they were made to do. They had protected the planet, but they had also unleashed chaos. What had Jared truly accomplished? He had awakened the warriors to stop one threat, but in doing so, he had ensured that Earth would never be the same again. The price of protection had been paid, and now Earth had to live with the consequences. The warriors stood silently in front of him, their massive forms towering over the battlefield. Their eyes were dimmer now, the fury within them receding. But Jared couldn't shake the feeling that they were still waiting for something. Maybe they were waiting for him to say something, to give them the order to leave. But Jared knew it wasn't his place to command them. The warriors had done what they were born to do. Now it was time for him to face the consequences. "You've done it," Jared muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "You've protected Earth. But I don't know if Earth deserves to be protected anymore." Jared stood amidst the ruins, staring into the vast expanse where the Zor ships had once hovered. The battle was over. The Zor had retreated into the void, their forces shattered and scattered, but Jared didn't feel the victory he had imagined. The warriors, once gods of destruction, now stood in silence, their bloodlust dissipating as they surveyed the devastation. The dust of battle still hung in the air, the remains of Zor ships scattered across the horizon, yet the battlefield felt eerily still. "We have defended Earth," the warrior leader said, his voice booming across the silence. "The threat has been eradicated. The Zor are no more." Jared didn't respond immediately. His mind raced, his thoughts tangled in a mess of conflicting emotions. The warriors had done what they were made to do. They had protected Earth, but at what cost? The planet, what was left of it, had been scarred by their actions. The surface was cracked, shattered in places by the sheer force of the battle. The Zor had been defeated, but the destruction was irreversible. Earth had been saved, but what remained to save? What now? Jared's voice was hoarse, barely audible over the distant hum of the warriors standing still, their eyes still glowing with the remnants of their fury. "You've destroyed everything. Is this really protection?" The leader of the warriors, who had been silent for a moment, turned his gaze toward Jared. "This is the cost of protection. Nothing less." Jared clenched his fists, frustration building. "You destroyed the very thing you were supposed to protect." Earth is gone, and you, his voice faltered as the weight of the realization settled in. He couldn't blame them. The warriors had done what they knew best, what they were made to do, but it wasn't enough. The cost had been too high. The warrior's gaze softened, just slightly. Earth is not gone. It is scarred, but it will heal. Our purpose was to defend it from those who sought to destroy it. We have fulfilled that purpose. But what about the people? Jared asked bitterly. What about the lives we lost? The history we erased? The people of Earth were long gone, the warrior leader said with a tone that felt almost like pity. Their legacy remains, in you. You are the last of them. The last link to a world that no longer exists. Jared's chest tightened. He wanted to scream at the warrior, to demand answers, to know why Earth had been abandoned, why it had come to this. But he couldn't. The truth was undeniable. He was the last living human who carried the weight of his ancestors' sins, their choices. And now, he had to live with the consequences of those choices. The warriors had protected Earth, but in doing so, they had ensured that there was nothing left to protect. The warrior leader stepped closer, towering over Jared. You carry the burden of your bloodline, human. But you also carry the responsibility of the future. The warriors are no longer needed. Our purpose has been fulfilled. It is time for you to choose what comes next. Jared looked up at the warrior, his mind racing. What came next? Was there even a future for Earth, or was it just a shadow of what it once was? He had never asked for this. He had never wanted to be the last hope of a dying world, but now it was his reality. The warriors had done their job, but now it was up to him to decide how humanity would move forward, if there was anything left to move forward to. You've destroyed everything, Jared whispered, his voice full of bitterness. You've fulfilled your purpose. But what's left for me? The warrior's gaze softened further. There's always something left. The future is not set in stone. It is shaped by those who remain. The warriors may be gone, but you are still here. And you carry the power to shape what comes next. Jared looked around at the desolation. The landscape was fractured, a wasteland of craters and debris, a testament to the destruction wrought by the battle. But in the distance, a small glimmer of light caught his eye, a spark of life amidst the devastation. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. It was the spark of something new, something that could grow. He turned back to the warrior leader. You're right, he said, his voice steadier now. The warriors have done their part. But the rest of us, we're not finished. Earth might be broken, but we're still here. We can rebuild. The warrior studied him for a moment, then nodded. You have learned well, human. But the path forward will not be easy. The galaxy will still remember the warrior's wrath. It will remember Earth's strength, but also its fragility. Jared's gaze hardened. Let them remember. Let them remember what Earth is capable of, but also what it stands for. It's not just about destruction. It's about resilience. About rebuilding, even after everything is lost. The warrior leader stepped back, giving Jared space to breathe. Then the future is yours to shape. The warriors will remain dormant, but the legacy of Earth will live on through you. Jared nodded, a sense of finality settling over him. The warriors were not his burden to carry any longer. They had done their part, and now it was his turn. The world had changed, irrevocably. But as long as there was breath in his lungs, there was still hope. Earth might never be what it was, but it could become something new. He would carry that legacy forward, no matter the cost. We'll rebuild, Jared said, his voice stronger now. We'll start over, from the ashes. And this time, we'll make sure we never forget who we are. The warrior leader's eyes gleamed with a quiet approval. Then the warriors will rest, and the world you build will be your own. Remember, human, Earth's strength lies not in its warriors, but in those who carry its spirit. With that, the warrior turned, his massive form retreating into the distance, joining the other warriors who had once stood as Earth's final line of defense. They would remain dormant now, their purpose fulfilled. And Jared, the last of humanity's bloodline, would take up the mantle of what remained. The world was broken, but it was not beyond repair. The warriors were gone, but their legacy lived on in the heart of one man. And Jared, though scarred and uncertain, knew one thing: he would not let Earth's story end in dust and ruin. He would forge a new path, a future for humanity, even if it meant walking through the ashes of the past. The galaxy would remember Earth's warriors, but Jared would ensure that it remembered Earth's will to survive, to rebuild, and to never give up. And that would be enough.